Thank you for joining us this Wednesday, the last week of our Interdisciplinary Research Forum. Next, we have Dr. Wondmagegn, and he will be presenting organic thin film transistor characterization for gas sensing application. Thank you, Woody, for joining us today.
Okay. Thank you, Kati, for the introduction, and I will go to the slides now. All right. All right. Thank you, Kati, again, and thank you, everyone, for attending this presentation. As Kati mentioned, my presentation is on organic thin film transistor characterization for gas sensing applications. Before I go to my presentation, I would like to acknowledge my collaborators, Professor Katz's group at Johns Hopkins University, and also Professor Hang at Tongji University, Shanghai, China. My primary collaborators are the group at Johns Hopkins, but occasionally I also collaborate with Professor Hang in China. And I'm also grateful for the source of funding from the National Science Foundation here. That's my collaborators. Now let's go to my presentation. And here, before I go to the gas sensing applications, to give you some perspective, it is a transistor. And we know that the transistor was invented back in the 1950s. And sometimes it is called the greatest invention of the 20th century. And since its invention, it dominated our technology world. And every handheld equipment, computers, everything is based on that invention. So here, I'm not talking about that one. This is a transistor with a different perspective, a different application, a different material. The transistor that was invented back then and which dominated the technology world was basically based on silicon, the silicon material. But here the transistor is with a different material. It is some organic, even carbon-based materials or inorganic materials similar to silicon, but not exactly silicon, like amorphous silicon, polysilicon, and in terms of organics, like pentasene, P3HT, and other materials. So the application is also with a different perspective. This technology is at a low cost, lightweight, and flexible, and a low temperature process. The silicon technology is like, it has to be in a very clean room. The processing room is a very clean room, standardized clean room. And the processing temperature is like 1,000 degrees centigrade. But this technology can be fabricated even at room temperature with like inject printing, screen printing process method, and so on. So that is the perspective. And the application is like in areas where we need flexibility, large area technology like solar cells, flat panel displays, sensors, and so on. So that is where this technology is applied. And this is basically the recent research on a different material. So you can see here, I have the transistor in the middle, and it is characterized first, and then it is tested for different applications. On the right side, you can see we have a pixel driver for flat panel display and sensors. And on the left side, there is a circuit which is also built on these types of transistors, because the circuit itself, the amplifier itself, has to be compatible with the transistor and the driver. And we're not going to make one circuit with a silicon, another circuit with these types of materials. So everything has to be made with the same material. So we have a circuit made from this flexible technology, and the drivers and the sensors are also made from this. So this is just the perspective of this technology and how it is applied. So with this perspective, if we go to specifically for the gas sensing, where my current research and collaboration is with the other group, the first thing that comes in mind would be what type of gases. We have many gases around. So what type of gases are we trying to sense? According to the chemistry classification, the chemists know much better than me, but just to mention how these are classified, there are volatile organic compounds. Some of them are components of vapors exhaled in breeze and emitted into the environment. So by testing that, we can test something in the person's body as well. We can, just for diagnosis purposes of any bacterial infection, even cancer, or internal organ disorders. So by analyzing just the breeze, by testing the components of the breeze, there is a chance to basically diagnose some of the issues that might be in a person's body. So that is a gas of interest in this study, one. The other part is industrial byproducts, like volatile carbon compounds, aldehydes, ketones, esters. These are just byproducts in the industry, and they could create a harm unless they are monitored. So these are some of the gases of interest for this as well. And environmental monitoring, like indoor pollution. And the last one, NO2 and ammonia. These are the ones actually we're working on. So this is just to give you a perspective what type of gases would be interested for this type of monitoring. But the one we are working with John Hopkins are, these ones are the two. We're planning to go for others as well, NO2 and ammonia. And the way to work on this one, first, our collaboration is just, I'm working on the simulation side, and they are working on the experimental side. They built the transistors, they experimentally test them, and then I simulate those transistors here, and after we match the results, I try to maximize that. They can't fabricate just thousands of transistors and see which one is better. But the simulation helps us to maximize, to simulate more transistors, and then guide the experimental or the fabrication group there. So that is how we collaborate. So the first thing is, this is just a transistor architecture where right now we're trying to work with. So there are 3 different architectures. We pick the one which gives us the best result, basically anticipated result so far, since it is on research. And we take one of them, and we have our own structure here. This is a transistor that we're working on. You can see the S and D, we call them source drain, and they are from gold material. The PQ T12, PQTS12 are the polymers which sense the gas actually. Those are the materials which sense the gas. The source and the drain, the gold is basically for connection purposes. And we have other materials underneath as well to make just the transistor complete. Then we gather the properties experimentally, and in terms of simulation. Then you can see the table for each material. For 2 of the materials that we have tested, these 2 polymers, we list this, we collect this, and once we collect the material properties, the next step is simulate the transistor or test the transistor in terms of fabrication. For my work, I have the models to test these transistors. These are the model equations. Just like any modeling studies, there has to be a model equation. This is the model equation for the transistor, for the materials, for charge transport. I use this and I simulate the transistors. And once I simulate the transistors, the simulation is first we just simulate the transistors without exposing them into a gas. So there is no gas there. We just simulate, see the property of those transistors. They fabricate and they collect data, and we match their data and my simulation data, just as you can see it here. It is the data, the black curve shows experimental, and the red curves are the simulation curves. So then we match them and we see it looks a good fit in this case. So we see that, and then after we get such a matching, I try to maximize. If I change the dimension of the transistor, one material with the other material, can I maximize? So I simulate and I try to answer that question before we move to exposing the transistor for a gas of interest, and then see how it tests that gas. So this was just the very first stage of the simulation and experiment. So once we agree on this and once we maximize the device, the next step is building circuits. That's a single device test. And this one is the circuit. We put 2 transistors together and we call it a circuit. So you can see the top one, this is a parallel circuit, and the bottom one is a series circuit. So we put them in series and in parallel and see who would give us a better result. We test that too. So all this is without exposing to any gas, just pure transistor and circuit. So we have, for the transistor, we have this. For the circuit, we tested the transistors individually, and then we put them into series and parallel, and they give us this result as well. As previously mentioned, the black curve is experiment, and this one is simulation, and the top 2 are for a parallel circuit, and the bottom 2 are for a series circuit. And this one also gives a good match with experiment, and we maximize it a little bit. Once we agree, we take the devices and the circuits and we expose them for a gas. A gas, as I mentioned earlier, it is NO2 and ammonia gas. And we see then how they can test. So the test result is this one. So this is just for a single device test. So for a single device, we expose the transistors to 1 ppm. 1 ppm NO2 means 1 parts per million. If we have a million particles in there, 1 is a gas NO2. So that's what it means. So a 1 ppm exposure, a 5 ppm exposure, a 1 ppm exposure for 5 minutes and for 10 minutes. Just we put the transistors into a gas source, an O2 gas source, and then we see how it measures that. And we see that with no exposure, there is no change in the property of the transistor. With 5-minute exposure to 1 ppm gas, we see that a 14% change in their current And there is also a parameter called mobility. We call it in terms of transistor property. There is a 0.27% change. So those changes would tell us how much gas is there. We know there is a gas, but in case if we want to test on an environment where we don't know that such a gas is there or not, we can just take that transistor and see whether that gas is there or not. And this is just a 14%, and there's also a 31% and 0.61% for a 10-minute exposure. We expose those transistors for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then see if they detected the gas. So that is for just a single transistor. Now, then we go to the circuit. The circuit is this one. Yeah, right here, I can tell you, you can see that they are the same devices, but they put together in series or in parallel. And I can show you there is a 92% change in the current and a 227% change for a 10-minute exposure. So this would give us an idea how putting transistors together would give a better detection than just a single transistor. So comparing the results here for a single transistor, which is a 14%, 31%. And if we go we didn't change anything. We just put transistors together and we made a circuit. So by just doing that, we see there is a jump here, a 92% detection capability, and here a 227% detection capability for a 10-minute exposure. So here, this is just the overall idea. We test transistors, we put them into a circuit, even different types of circuits, not only just series parallel. We put them in an inverter in terms of just engineering concept, inverter circuit and other types of circuits, and see if there is a capability of detecting. One other concept here is also these types of transistors, as I said, they are just organic materials. It's just a carbon-based material. And there is a chance of degradation. It's not like silicon. Silicon is a very ordered material, a crystalline material, which cannot react with these environmental effects, and it is stable. That's why we have all these computers, handheld equipment is very stable for multiple years. But these are materials which easily react with the environment and they easily degrade. So in addition to getting a high response like this, one of our goals is also to get a stable material. So we test different materials, we put them in different circuits, and also we maximize their stability. It's not only for response maximization, we work on stability of these materials and transistors as well. So this is the overall goal of the project, just having a good sensor with a good sensing capability. And since these materials are very reactive to the environment, we also are trying to get a very stable material for this type of application. So this is the overall goal of the project and my current research with the group I just mentioned earlier. And this is the summary, and some of the results that we have, I showed you, I presented here, are recently published in the Journal of Computational Electronics. Some is on the drafts for submission. And in general, we have experimental analyte sensitivity data for NO2 exposure. And we use a mobility dependent model, and we were able to have a higher sensitivity for a circuit than a single transistor. So this hopefully gives you what my current research looks like. And I'm trying to look for collaborations here at TCNG as well. As I mentioned, some of the words here, you can see some of the work is a chemistry related. So I was trying to see some people who would be interested in the science field, the engineering field. This is a very interdisciplinary engineering work. So I'm looking for that collaboration here at TCNG as well. With that, I will, if there's any question, I welcome that. If not, I will hand it over to Kati. Thank you so much for attending this presentation.
Thank you so much. That's so interesting. Courtney, you have a question, or is that a clap? That's a clap.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, so I just want to make a plug for our faculty research database for those that are watching this in real time and in on recorded time, that we do have a faculty research database on the OGSR website for which you can look at faculty research interests and perhaps find each other on research commonalities. And I think that's it. I don't have any other questions. And so thank you.
Thank you so much.
That was wonderful. This concludes our second to last presentation for the research forum this week. We have one more today at 11:30. This presentation will be recorded and viewable on the research forum website.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye, thank you.